When Abin Sur arrives on Earth, he sends his ring to choose someone worthy, and it chooses Hal, who is brought to the Dying Lantern and told he has been chosen because he can overcome great fear. On Oa, the planet of the Guardians, Sinestro passes on Abin Sur's message, but the Guardians decline to act until they assess the situation. They've definitely got something to hide. And we return to Earth, where Hector Hammond, played by Peter Sarsgaard, in what may be the weirdest look of the film, and who also happens to be an old friend of Hal and Carol's, is brought by two government goons to a facility where he meets Amanda Waller, played by Angela Bassett. Now, in the comics and in Suicide Squad, Waller is a government operative who is more than willing to get her hands dirty to do her job, and not a doctor. Anyway, Waller informs Hammond that he has been assigned to autopsy Abin Sur, who is supposedly the first extraterrestrial humanity has encountered, so Superman hasn't made his appearance yet. While Hammond works on the body, Hal tries to activate the lantern given to him by Abin Sur, ultimately resulting in the ring taking him over to recite the Green Lantern Oath.
Brightest day, blackest night. No evil shall escape my sight. But those who worship evil's might, beware my power. Green Lantern's light.
And while he's out drinking with Carol, he's attacked by three thugs, who he winds up knocking out with a burst of green energy, only for the ring to bring him to Oa. And after a long and confusing sequence in which he is scanned and x-rayed, which is presumably to get the ring to create his CG suit and mask, he meets Tomare, who happened to be the narrator in the beginning of the film, and rehashes a lot of what he said at the beginning to Hal, who happens to be the first human Green Lantern, and offers even more exposition as to the nature of Oa and the Lanterns. He head to a meeting of all the Lanterns, where Sinestro explains the threat of Parallax, but there is much unknown about him despite what we heard in the opener. Also, the music playing in this scene is eerily similar to that in The Dark Knight.
We are now vulnerable. United, we are still invincible.
Which may have something to do with the fact that James Newton Howard was involved on the scoring of both films. After that, Hal begins training, in which he learns the ring can create constructs from one's imagination, which in a bad movie can turn him into a Mary Sue. Of course, Hal isn't a Mary Sue in this film, but it's still a very bad movie, before he's introduced into combat training by Kilowog, voiced by Michael Clarke Duncan. I have to admit that the three main Lanterns we see, Kilowog, Sinestro, and Tomare, are actually well cast, and fit their characters pretty well. In the training sequence, Sinestro tells Hal that fear is the enemy, and a weakness, so he can't have any to be a Green Lantern, something that makes him skeptical of Hal's ability, and leaving Hal discouraged. Hey, did you know this was supposed to be an outright comedy starring Jack Black as the titular Green Lantern? And how did he prove he could overcome fear? He was a contestant on Fear Factor. I'm not joking. And I have to admit, that would have been even worse than what we got here. So, yes, suppose we're grateful that this isn't the absolute worst possible movie. And while he's in a classroom teaching, Hector begins hearing thoughts and soon realizes he's been infected by something from Abin Sur's body. After being called into a meeting with his father, a senator played by Tim Robbins, Hector learns he was assigned the autopsy out of nepotism, much to his disappointment. Meanwhile, Sinestro leads a group of Green Lanterns to attack Parallax, only for the entity to prove too powerful, resulting in Sinestro demanding answers from the Guardians, who explain that Parallax is a former Guardian who sought to control the power of fear and was corrupted by it. In the special features of the DVD, the Guardian who was corrupted is revealed to be Krona, another supervillain and an enemy of the Green Lanterns. But he's someone who's far different from Parallax.
Then we have no choice. We must prepare to harness the power of our enemy and fight fear with fear.
At a Ferris Industries party, Hector attempts to kill his father, having seemingly developed telekinesis as his eyes grow yellow, but the senator is saved by Hal, who turns his crushing helicopter into a green Hot Wheels playset. If it hasn't become obvious, the CG in this film is really weak. Hector is enraged and we see his head is growing, showing how he is infected by Parallax. Meanwhile, Hal, as Green Lantern, visits Carol.
Hal?
How did you know it was me?
What do you mean? I've known you my whole life. I've seen you naked. You don't think I would recognize you because I can't see your cheekbones?
Okay, superhero costume rule number 1. Make a mask so that nobody can recognize your face. Hector is brought to the facility by Waller, whom we learn had her family gunned down by an unknown assailant, which isn't part of her comics backstory. Anyway, he is strapped down to be studied, his body having increasingly mutated from Parallax, but he breaks free and attacks Waller and his father, with the security at the base proving to be no use against him. Hal arrives, having been alerted by his ring, and saves Waller, soon discovering how damaging fire is to Parallax, but Hector learns that Hal is the Green Lantern, saying how he's embraced his fear as a weapon before incinerating his father alive. Hal repels Hector after pressing his ring to him, only to have Parallax tell him that once he destroys Earth, Oa is next.